So, what exactly is a spiritual awakening? Here's what you need to know and why it matters. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean, and I help people master the law of attraction, spiritually awaken, and embark on a path of ascension. In this video, I'm going to explain to you exactly what a spiritual awakening is and how it works so that you can feel more empowered and advance into an ascension into the most amazing, miraculous reality of love and light that you have ever imagined. So the first thing to know is that spiritual awakening is natural. It is actually a natural process that is indeed a part of nature. And it's very much like the sunrise. I think that's probably the best metaphor. Now, when the sun rises, you notice that it doesn't just, it's not like pitch dark and then all of a sudden, boom, the sun's in the sky and everything's bright light. And it's the same thing with spiritual awakening. And I think this is important to understand because sometimes we imagine that a spiritual awakening is like we're just going to be hit with it all at once, right? But it's not like that. It's just, it functions in the same way that light in nature functions, because a spiritual awakening is actually a process of light, more and more light emerging within your consciousness to reveal not only the truth of who you are, but reveal many other truths that you may have been previously unaware of. Just as the sunrise is very gradual, it's a very beautiful, graceful process. And processes in nature are always like this. We see it in the transition from one season to another. We see it in the transition from night into day. It's beautiful, it's slow, it's graceful, and it's gradual. So a spiritual awakening is very much like a sunrise happening within you. Now, the difference between the physical sunrise and the awakening of the light within you is that the sunrise is pretty much always at the same pace, right? But a spiritual awakening is a more advanced process. It's a process of human evolution, and it is paced differently depending on where we are in our planetary evolution and in our human evolution. So there might be periods of time when our evolution is moving forward very slowly. Perhaps there are times when that light is very dim. And then there are other times, such as this current time, when we are experiencing advanced, accelerated evolution, which is what ascension energy is. It's the energy of that accelerated evolutionary process. And that means that a lot of light is coming in not only to our planet, but into our human selves more and more rapidly. Now, the purpose of spiritual awakening is really very simple. It happens in such a way that we can see more clearly. I think spiritual awakening is best understood with the metaphor of light and darkness. So the more that light enters into a dark space, the more clearly you can see. The more that the light of a spiritual awakening enters into your being, the more clearly you can see who you are and what is going on in the wider scope of not only our planet, but ultimately even the universe. Here's another way to look at it so that you understand why this is so important. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a very dark forest. There's no moonlight, there's no starlight because it's cloudy, and it's just pitch dark, and you literally can't see anything around you. Now imagine you have a tiny flashlight or a tiny candle or a very small light. What's going to happen is that small amount of light is going to illuminate the space that is just within your closest proximity. So you're going to be able to see something, but you're not going to be able to see everything. You may not even be entirely clear about exactly where you are. So you're only going to be able to function within the space that is illuminated by that small amount of light. Now, if that light were to increase, let's say that it became a big spotlight and it illuminates a great distance beyond you, suddenly you have a much better perspective about exactly where you are and what your situation is, right? So spiritual awakening actually serves the very same function in terms of your place in the universe, not just your place on Earth, but your place in the entire cosmos ultimately. So in other words, you would have greater clarity, right? Now, in that example, the darker things are, the more confused you are. You might be confused about what's going on. You might be confused about what to do next. You might be confused about where to go, who else is around, what else is around. But the more light you have, the more clarity you have, the more calmness you have, because now you know where you are and you probably know much better what to do. Now, the funny thing about a spiritual awakening, which actually happens in exactly the same way, it's about increasing light, increasing illumination, increasing clarity within your being. Here's the funny thing about that. That light, in truth, is your inner light. That light is coming from who you really are. And because you are a part, we are all a part of that ultimate reality of omnipresent light, love, and infinite energy, our own light emerges from that larger omnipresent light. So that light that grows within us is waking us up. Just like the sunrise wakes us up from our dream world at night, that inner light is waking us up from a virtual dream about what we think our life is. And what that dream is a dream of a false belief that each of us is our physical bodies. Now, here's the thing. When you think you are your physical body, the dream becomes kind of scary because you become aware that you're vulnerable, that you could perish. It becomes all about fear, about survival, about conflict, about all of these things that exist in the finite universe of duality. And the dream becomes kind of dark. Now, I don't mean dark in the sense of bad or wrong. I mean dark in the sense of not enough light to have true clarity about who we really are and what is actually going on. So in the dream of belief that you are your physical body, you are relying on your 5 physical senses to tell you everything you need to know about the world, about the universe, about life. And let's face it, those 5 senses are extremely limited, right? And you can end up being quite confused. And in fact, in that case, life can often become more about coping with what you don't know rather than living from what you do know with absolute certainty and clarity. And then the next thing you know, you're spending your days often trying just to survive on a physical, mental, and emotional level and just get through the difficulty and the hardship of living life in a dream and a belief, a false belief that who you are is your physical, limited body. So a spiritual awakening is kind of like the sun beginning to rise in your consciousness, beginning to wake you up that you are more than your physical body, you are more than your physical circumstances, you are an infinite spiritual being. And that is a powerful revelation that begins to dawn on you as that spiritual awakening unfolds. Now, I know there are a lot of times when people will say things like, well, my spiritual awakening happened on such and such a date. Oftentimes, what they're really talking about is that something happened in their life that functioned as a catalyst to wake them up. I'll give you an analogy for that. It's like if you have an alarm clock in the morning, let's say, the sun's going to rise no matter what, right? But many of us use an alarm clock. So the alarm clock would be, at a specific time and date, that alarm goes off and wakes you up. But what you wake up to is the light of the sun. It's after that moment, it's the light of the sun, the light of day that actually gets you out of bed and moving forward. So when people feel or say, you know, my spiritual awakening happened on such and such a date, and they say that with such clarity, they're often talking about a catalyst. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I don't want you to feel, if you haven't felt something like that, if you haven't felt like, well, I don't really know if I'm having a spiritual awakening because I didn't have this major thing happen in my life, that's okay. Because, you know, using my same analogy, many people wake up without an alarm clock. It's just that it's going to feel more gradual if you don't have that perhaps a dramatic catalyst that suddenly jolts you into some kind of a revelation. It doesn't matter, because that light is still going to emerge within you, and each one of us is unique and individual, so we will experience our own spiritual awakening in our own individual way. Now, let me explain to you why a spiritual awakening is so essential and so important right now. It has to do with free will and maintaining conscious choice in terms of your existence in this world and in this cosmos. Now, you might have noticed that Earth is going through massive change right now. We have technology, we have all kinds of changes happening very, very rapidly. And we have a lot of spiritual changes happening as well. We are moving very quickly to a very different future, one that could even potentially be unrecognizable to what we know right now. So it is imperative that we have more light, more illumination in our awareness and our consciousness, so that we can retain our center as beings and be clear about what is going on and where we want to go. Now, in the past, your choices were probably relatively clear. You could choose where you were going to go to school, where you were going to live, you know, who you were going to hang out with, where you might be working. And of course, depending on your culture, your choices would be different. But whatever those choices were to you, whether they were large or small, limited or more expanded, you still probably had a pretty good idea of what those choices were. And if you think about it, these were all choices that were related to your physical body, so that it kind of matched the belief that you are your physical body. So then you could operate in the world out of the belief that who you are is your body, who you are is your past history, and then you make all of your choices according to that. But there comes a point where those choices start to change and shift. Even our biology starts to change and shift, and technology begins to enter the picture, and artificial intelligence begins to enter the picture. And now we're beginning to merge with that artificial intelligence more and more. And things can start to become very difficult to navigate. And maybe the way you saw things in the past, it just doesn't look that way anymore, and you perhaps don't know what to do. So therefore, we need to ascend to a higher level of choice, to a more expanded level of consciousness, so that we can get our bearings again and truly understand where we are as beings in this cosmos. So ultimately, a spiritual awakening is really a powerful paradigm shift. It's a shift from the paradigm of belief that you are your physical body and all of the limitations that that includes, and the inability to see beyond it that includes. It's shifting from that paradigm to a completely different paradigm of reality, where you wake up to the fact that you are an infinite being who has the power to determine your destiny, not only on this planet, but also in the entire cosmos. A spiritual awakening is a manifestation of that paradigm shift. It awakens us to our true selves, where we recognize that we are creators who have the power to live in command of our bodies and our lives. And that's what brings us into a much higher level of empowerment and clarity. Now, I want to share with you the best way to consciously connect with your own spiritual awakening, and that is to connect with your heart. Your heart is a powerhouse of intelligence, of light and love. Your heart is actually your direct connection to infinite intelligence, to infinite love, and to infinite light. Your heart is your direct connection to the source of your own spiritual awakening. So that source is right within you. Now, here's the thing. We have been programmed to ignore our hearts, right? We've been told the heart's not practical. You just can't pay attention to that sort of thing. You have to really be practical and mentally oriented and really use your thinking mind to determine everything. Well, that doesn't work when things are expanding and changing at the rate that they are today, because your conscious mind can't keep up. So you need a higher, more powerful source of intelligence as your guiding force in all of this, and that is your beautiful inner heart. Now, when I say the heart, I'm not talking about the emotional heart. I'm talking about something deeper. It lies beneath the emotions. Go deep within yourself to that voice that's been talking to you all your life, that maybe you were told to ignore, that you were told wasn't practical. That voice that has actually told you the truth about how things really ought to be for you and in your life. Learn to connect with your real innermost wisdom and deepest feelings. Trust yourself. Trust your heart, because that's where you're going to feel grounded in your own spiritual awakening. Because let's face it, a spiritual awakening can often cause some turmoil in life, because, it's a big change in perspective. It's a big change in perception. It's a change in your overall consciousness. And as that light illuminates more and more, you're going to go through changes, right? So you need a center of guidance. You need something within you that connects to the source of that awakening, so that you can feel coherent within yourself, so that you can feel centered within yourself. And that source, fortunately for all of us, is right within. It's not outside of us, it's inside of us. And in order to connect with your heart, you need to give yourself time with yourself, whether it's meditation, whether it's just quiet time alone, just being with you, honoring yourself, appreciating yourself, loving yourself, listening to yourself. All of those kinds of things are extremely valuable when you are going through a spiritual awakening. And just remember that it's as simple as the sunrise. It's as simple as the emerging light of consciousness, the light of illumination of that higher infinite love and light that is awakening you for your benefit, so that you can see where you are in the universe, so that you can see what's going on, and so that you can make the best possible choices that you can make for you. So leave me a comment below and let me know if you have felt any of the things that I'm talking about within yourself. Let me know if this resonates with you. Let me know if this is helpful for you. Anything else that you'd like to share, I would welcome hearing from you in the comments. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please share it out with your friends. Remember to subscribe and always hit that notification bell so that you are notified every time I post a new video. And with that, I'm sending you love, light, and loads of positive energy. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.